so we could work together to build a strong team of civil servants that could rise to the different challenges and seize upon the different opportunities in the new era. Thank you.
The second debate session ends. The Council now proceeds to the third debate session. For members who wish to speak in this session, please click on the raise hand feature of Zoom. The staff will jot down your names. The debate themes in this session is new impetus to the economy, integration into the national development, planning for the future, Northern Metropolis, increasing housing and land supply. The policy areas covered in this session have been set out on this page for members' easy reference. Ms. Yong Hoi Yen. Thank you, President. In the 2021 PA, the administration devoted a lot of passage to the development of the Northern Metropolis. The northern part will be an important part of the development of Hong Kong, covering Shanghai, Kutong, and Hong Shou. This has given a full consideration of the country's 14th five-year plan, and it will also allow Hong Kong to fully integrate with the GBA development. When it was announced, there were acclaims from various sectors of society that looked forward to the early implementation of the Northern Metropolis. However, according to the government, it would take 20 years for the Northern Metropolis to be basically complete, and that was rather controversial because the country has been developing very rapidly, and we must align with the nation's development ASAP. Besides, the major business areas in Central and Kwun Tong are now saturated. We are in urgent need of more commercial space. The Northern Metropolis is exactly the solution to this problem, so it should be completed as soon as possible. The government is duty-bound to expedite all steps to shorten the time required for each step, covering town planning, engineering works, design and approval, and public engagement. The government should consider enacting a new piece of legislation so that the Northern Metropolis scheme can proceed at full steam. In fact, all over the world, people are using MIC in construction. In fact, it's been used in Hong Kong and the mainland. It saves costs. And then we can also use the land for temporary housing. We have got such examples in Hong Kong, for instance, interim housing in Sam Shui Po, Junkanno, Park Sing Kong, married disciplined services quarters, and Penny's Bay Quarantine Center, etc. Of course, these schemes are subject to site constraints, the topography, infrastructure, and whether there is room for storing the prefabricated units, because space is needed for transportation and assembly of the units. So that will have an impact on various regulations covering housing. Now, the Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Frank Cheng, said that most of the MIC units were fabricated on the mainland, and therefore some supporting arrangements are needed. I have discussed with people in the trade, and they are of the view that roads in Hong Kong are too narrow. It is difficult to adopt MIC technology, and so I'm of the view that the government should have a new set of legislation and planning standards for the Northern Metropolis for organic integration with GBA. To integrate into the country's development, we must start from planning. We should adopt similar, if not identical, standards of GBA, and that can cover the width of roads. And the second is costs. This is a major issue. Now, the government has pledged that the Northern Metropolis will be value for money, but then the government has spent a lot of our fiscal reserves in fighting the epidemic, and we have had deficits in our budget for 2 years in a row. And we don't know when we can have economic recovery, and the cost of Northern Metropolis is quite dear. Whether the government will be able to to have enough money for the Northern Metropolis is a problem. We want the government to give us an account ASAP. The government should tell us which bureau and official will be responsible for the construction of the Northern Metropolis. The THB will be reorganized very soon, and the Development Bureau will be involved, and we need a comprehensive and plan for Northern Metropolis. We must have someone responsible. We need a dedicated department to rationalize all steps of the Northern Metropolis. In the previous session, members commented on good governance, and they criticized the government for being fragmented in its administration, and there is room for improvement in many aspects. I hope the administration can avoid this in the development of the Northern Metropolis being a very important initiative for Hong Kong. We must have comprehensive planning. I understand that the government has devoted a lot of resources and energy on fighting the epidemic. I hope the government in so doing will not overlook the long-term developments of Hong Kong. Our country is developing by leaps and bounds. We must not mark time. We must integrate ourselves into the overall development of the country ASAP. Thank you, President. Dr. Wendy Hung. Thank you, President. I speak to support Ms. Starry Lee's motion of thanks. The PA here has got a very grand plan. The Northern Metropolis will give us space for various developments. And the 15th five-year plan has positioned Hong Kong in developing into 8 major hubs. Now, in this aspect, I'm going to talk about how we can integrate into the development of the country, how Hong Kong can develop. Now, to integrate into the development of the country, we need this mentality. Now, I am pleased that there is a chapter in the policy address on integration into national development. Now, we should not just consider integration in economic aspect, but in other aspects as well. However, right now our mentality is purely natural. It's one way. We want our enterprises to invest in the mainland. We ask that our professionals can work in the mainland. Our young people can live and have startups there. Yes, I support this idea, but if we overemphasize one-way transformation, economic transformation, there is going to be a problem. Now, of course, we can enjoy a greater market, a more abundant supply of talent. That is good. But I think this can be a double-edged sword for the economy of Hong Kong, because there may be economic transformation and replacement and displacement in Hong Kong as a result. And not all Hong Kong young people can compete in the mainland. And it's not that everyone would like to leave Hong Kong and develop in the mainland. Professionals and high-end talents and every young person are valuable assets of Hong Kong. Our plan should be to nurture, to attract and retain talents and provide opportunities for them. Now, to integrate into the national development, it should be a two-way economic activity.
Not only should we encourage our talents and corporations to go to the mainland, and we should also attract talents from the mainland to Hong Kong. We have to attract talents from the cultural industries as well as the INT industries to come to Hong Kong and diversify our economic structure. To build up Hong Kong's economy is to integrate with the national development. If we can bring opportunities arising from the national developments for Hong Kong's young people, I believe this will help to enhance young people's national identity. Now, on Northern Metropolis, we should chart the development strategy for the industry chain as the Northern Metropolis as soon as possible and provide jobs for the grassroots people. Previously, the northern part is the boundary sites between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Now it shows a major change of development direction, and it is encouraging. According to the policy address, balance between work and life should be achieved. This is an improvement in terms of mindset and planning, and it is applaudable. However, I'm concerned that only the spatial development blueprint is provided for the Northern Metropolis. In terms of the specifics about industries and economic activities and how we can achieve the goals, there is currently no direction. In terms of developing a new metropolis, we have to consider what kind of economic activities can be generated from the spatial development. In other words, we have to have synergy between spatial developments and economic development so that it won't turn into a ghost city or a place where people would simply work in but cannot live in. Now, I think it is the mindset of developing INT in the north and financial activities in the south, but I think this is too general. Simply by INT, it is not enough to provide jobs for 2 million people. What other kinds of industries can we have in the Northern Metropolis? What will we have in 10 or 20 years' time? We need a broad direction to guide the allocation of resources, strategy development, market activities, as well as nurturing of talents. Besides INT, the Northern Metropolis should take up a more important role. Our economic structure is too narrow, and the structure is hollowed, and young people lack upward mobility, and it causes deeper conflicts among people. And the financial structure mostly cater for the upper class and the elites. We need a new center to provide employment opportunities and upward mobility opportunities for middle class and young people. I believe that Northern Metropolis should be more than a place to plug the gap for INT development. In terms of trading, tourism, and other industries and other traditional sectors, it should be a place to provide opportunity for transformation. And about new industries, Industry 2.5, as well as new agricultural and fisheries industries, they should be allowed to prosper in the Northern Metropolis. Third, we have to create an industry chain by achieving a collaboration effect by combining technologies and manufacturing. So we cannot only have INT in the north. We have to allow players in the middle level to join the production chain. I urge the government to set out a comprehensive industry development blueprint incorporating the Northern Metropolis so that we can we can fully utilize the spatial advantages as well as the geographical advantages of the Northern Metropolis to provide opportunities for the middle class and young people. Third, I propose creating a high-end aviation cluster in Hong Kong. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, Hong Kong is given the position of international aviation hub. According to the policy address, we will have an airport city. I do agree with the proposal. Also, the chief executive mentioned that the Hong Kong International Airport would create a high-end aviation hub in the GBA with the Zhuhai Airport, including aircraft manufacturing, maintenance, and so on. The details are yet to be provided. It doesn't mean that we are shifting the high-end aviation industry in Hong Kong to Zhuhai. We have been calling for the government to adopt Industry 2.0 combining manufacturing and high-end industry to develop the industry. For example, maintenance of aircraft. It is a servicing industry. However, there are also elements of manufacturing, including manufacturing and repairing. I have conducted a study on maintenance of aircraft engine. The biggest repairing cluster is located in Hong Kong. There are some 40 workshops for the repairing of aircraft engines. More than 30 aircraft have over 4,000 aircraft engines maintained and repaired in Hong Kong. Now, this would create synergy with the aircraft aviation industry to foster a production chain from manufacturing of aircraft, delivery to maintenance, and then create a multiplier effect for the industry. A lot of technical positions would be are provided. After completion of the on-the-job training and with a diploma, employees can enjoy a steady progression pathways. A few days ago, I visited a repairing company for aircraft engine. Despite the epidemic, the industry still enjoyed growth. Amidst the blow dealt by the epidemic, the industry is striving to retain its talent and maintain its service. However, Hong Kong faces a lot of competition in this regard. Because of the cost, some businesses are moving to the GBA, and only the highest value-adding services are kept in Hong Kong. This mindset has caused the deindustrialization of Hong Kong in the past. Our economy has become less diversified, and it created deep-rooted conflict in society. Well, we can plug this gap by utilizing on our other advantages. I totally agree that we should collaborate with the Guangdong provinces in Guangdong province in terms of the aviation industry. But we shouldn't just think about moving our industries to Guangdong. We have to provide diversified opportunities for our local industries. This should be our goal. I support the government's direction to collaborate with the mainland authorities to create synergy. I think we have to seize this position given by the central authorities to us as international aviation hub. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Lam. President, the shortage of land supply is a headache for all sectors. 25 years have passed since the reunification. Still, we have more and more people waiting for public housing, and the waiting time is ever longer. Private housing are unaffordable. Do we really have so little land? That's not the case. According to the policy address, last year, 330 hectares land were identified. Between 2021 and 2023, 316,000 public housing units will be created. Now, in the Northern Metropolis, there will be 30,000 hectares of land accommodating 2.5 million people. With the Central Waters Reclamation Plan, 1,700 hectares of land will be created, accommodating 1.7 million people. These are the figures provided by the government, and this is we still haven't taken into account the brownfield sites as well as Chou Tong land and country parks, peripheral sites with low ecological value. It is not the case that we lack land for development or other purposes. So what's the problem? President, the development of sites of land are slowed down by the by the long processes. For a spade-ready site, it takes many years for houses to be built and for population intake. We have to compress the administrative timetable. Even the government is saying that we should remove red tapes. So it is not about whether we should remove red tapes. It is about how we can do that. The administration said that we have to streamline the procedures. For example, the central waters plan. After so many obstacles, fundings were granted. However, the initial feasibility study will be completed in 42 months' time. By then, the new term of the government will have come into office and a new term of the Legislative Council as well. 42 months. We don't know what the progress will be. We don't know how expensive private flags will become. This is the long timetable shows that the government needs to be more determined in creating land. The government has failed in simple things like sharing spatial data. So what's the use of talking about streamlining procedures? What the professions see is that departments and bureaus are taking a silo mindset and they lack collaboration. When there is a change of office, plans have to start again. It is a waste of time. Last month, in the council meeting, Ms. Elizabeth Quad asked an oral question. I also asked the administration about the reorganization of the government structure. I urged the government to establish a common spatial data platform. Well, the plan was supposed to be realized in year 2024. Now, the government is talking about a smart city and smart economy. However, the government has taken 17 years to consolidate data between and among departments and bureaus, and it still isn't finished yet. These are all empty talks.
Now we need a scientific basis to develop land, and then on this basis we build a database so that we could link up different departments involved in housing, land, and so on. This is a matter of urgency. We need to have to compile this data, and then we could enhance efficiency. Now we need to link up the system. We also need software. I welcome the chief executive's suggestion to have senior officers taking the lead in this task. It's not the first time the government has proposed an interdepartmental effort, but then we are not much encouraged by past achievements. So here we will, and I and the members of the public will look forward to successful example. Apart from housing, Madam Deputy, I also want to talk about smart city and conservation. The Chief Secretary mentioned the 5G coverage and stability, saying that we are ranked first and second respectively. And then the government's also taking advantage of a 5G for application on the remote medical care and real-time supervision of works and so on. This could all improve productivity. It's a good start. But then on city management, the government needs to do more in applying technology. 10 years ago, the Singaporean government started smart car parks, and then last year they have the first barrier-free smart car park, and it's only last year that we had the first automated parking system. We need to boldly apply technology and information technology so we could, address many of the issues involving daily necessities of the public. The government is 10 years late. When we first talk about piloting the use of autobus card for parking meters, there are other payment systems already in place. And now, with the pilot scheme completed, we are in a new era of technology already. So we can't just be trying to catch up. We have to take the lead, rather. So, technological development is about racing with time. If we are slow, then we are behind. So it's a matter of how the government could use policy to ensure to promote collaboration among the government and the public and the businesses. Now, Miss Elizabeth Quad and another member have have started a smart living group. We have put forward 15 suggestions. I hope the government will seriously consider the suggestions and include them in their policy initiatives. Finally, I'd like to talk about conservation. The Northern Metropolis is proposed in the policy address. Apart from building an innovation and technology center, we want to promote coexistence of development and conservation. I'm all for sustainable development. Conservation and development can go hand in hand. It needs to be based on science. We need to conserve the environment as well as historic monuments, and then the government could take forward projects with economic value. Now, we always have good development concepts. It's all a matter of execution. We're not short of such concepts. So I hope the government will give careful thought but act swiftly on all these projects. Thank you. Dr. Tan Yueheng. Thank you, President. I want to talk about financial services. There are just 586 characters on financial services in the policy address. In previous addresses, there were at least 1,000 characters. I'm not saying that more characters that means the government attaches more importance to that. But financial services are a pillar industry in Hong Kong. If we don't even take financial services seriously, then our economy will do even worse. So I appeal to the government to pay more attention to the development of financial services and plow in more resources there. Now, Hong Kong is an international financial center. The policy address put forward a number of measures to consolidate our position. I would also like to make some suggestions. Firstly, we need to strengthen the position of the Hong Kong Exchange. Hong Kong Exchange is the core representative of the financial services in Hong Kong. It plays an important role. We could see that for SPAC listing regime, it came into effect on the 1st of January. That shows that the relevant departments are now proactive now. They're no longer like several years ago when they were dragging their feet. And then we could also see that there is some room for improvement in the capital market. For example, last year, there are 98 IPOs in Hong Kong. The year before, over 100. So there's a drop in numbers, and there's also a drop in of the amount of funds raised. Well, we want to keep our top 3 position. So listing of SPAC is not enough to resolve the problem. So we need to play the role of linking the mainland with the country. That should be our strategic objective. We could enhance efficiency, and then we could bring businesses to come to Hong Kong to be listed instead of going to other markets. And then we should serve the going global policy for mainland enterprises. The Beijing Exchange, Shanghai Exchange, and Shenzhen Exchange should all, for these exchanges, Hong Kong should develop in different direction from these exchanges to complement each other. And then we could become a fundraising center for biotechnology companies. And we should bring more artificial intelligence companies and innovation companies to come to Hong Kong for IPOs. And the second point is about consolidating our position as the offshore renminbi trading center. In the 14th five-year plan, it said that we need to build a new form of complementary development. Hong Kong is the biggest offshore center, but then Singapore and London are competing with us. So we need to expand the scope of the offshore renminbi business scale. We need to provide more products. And then, for example, there could be a bond issuance for local governments, and there could also be RMB denominated securities for issuance here. I want the government to come up with proposals as soon as possible. You should consult the revenue sector and come up with a timetable. Hopefully you could put that into practice this year. Third point, improving market regulation. Now we're seeing a wave of taxation reform around the world, and for family office, we don't have any tax concession measures for setting up family offices here. So I hope the government will come up with some measures. And then last September, the Wealth Management Connect and the southbound of Bond Connect with Greater Bay Area provides an advantage to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an international financial center. We enjoy the advantage of one country, two systems, so we should further broaden the various connect schemes in both depth and breadth. And then now banks are the main parties involved in the wealth management connect scheme. We should expand that to cover other forms of companies. And there should be mutual recognition of qualifications. And then on we want to become a center of wealth management center, but then we are also the financial service center. Of course, that involves wealth management, but that is also about asset management. We need to have new products, so the general public could also enjoy the success of our development as an international financial center, and then there could be better financial services for the public to also manage their wealth. The fourth point, we need to build the Green Finance Center as soon as possible. The policy address wants to develop assess the feasibility of Hong Kong becoming a carbon trading center. Well, we have been talking about it for a long time, but we haven't seen any concrete proposal yet. Perhaps we are lagging behind already. On the mainland they have the 2022. They have in 2020 they already had carbon trading center. Singapore, they have a carbon trading center, and they will be upgraded soon. So we need to catch up and come up with a proposal as soon as possible for implementation. With green finance management, we have to consider carbon footprint and other aspects, and we have to consider the stress tests and so on. So we need to explain all the findings of our study to the public, and then we have to talk about green fundraising projects as well, and the relevant mechanisms. And then we could also serve the development of the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, if we have green credit market and green financing at the same time, if we have a carbon trading center, then Hong Kong would have formed this green finance center. Fifth point, fintech. We have to develop fintech and take advantage of the advantages of the Greater Bay Area. Now there is this sandbox testing initiative. This is a move in the right direction, but we have to speed up such a development. And apart from that, there are other aspects that we need to strengthen. First is integration with the digital RMB. We have to support technical testing in Hong Kong of digital RMB. And then there has to be digital RMB Connect eventually. Also, we need to train talents, fintech trained talents. There is this special scheme for fintech professionals. Now we know there's a strong demand for fintech professionals and talents, so we could perhaps bring in such talents from other municipalities in the GBA, and also the Hong Kong must also take advantage of our professional services in accounting, legal services, and so on. Hong Kong businesses could help to manage overseas asset risks and so on. And then we could work with the Greater Bay Area to promote the Insurance Connect. And then with RCEP, this is the right time for us to develop this area of services. Thank you. Mr. Chi Kwok Keung. Now, I think the key aspect of the policy address is the Northern Metropolis development strategy. I grew up and work in the northern part of the New Territories, and I have witnessed the development of Shenzhen. So Hong Kong needs to integrate more proactively with national development under the 14th five-year plan. With the start of the Northern Metropolis development, then Shenzhen and Hong Kong will be further integrated. And in terms of financial services, education, cultural services, and so on, there will be more collaboration, and that will help to spur the development of the Greater Bay Area. Now, Hong Kong as an education sector has this international element, so we could attract students from outside Hong Kong to come here for education. The government has to consider how to revise its policy, so Mainland university students who come to Hong Kong. And then the government should also offer facilitating measures for cross-boundary students. And there's need to improve the qualifications framework so we will have enough talents to serve our needs. As for higher education institutes, there could be further collaboration on research front with mainland universities, and commercialization of R&D findings are important, of course.
The Northern Metropolis is a visionary plan. In the process, our administration can engage different sectors of society so that in developing the Northern Metropolis, apart from promotion of innovation technology, we should ensure conservation to achieve ecology, civilization as advocated by the country. Now, for instance, we have endangered species octars there, and in Taikoo we have a very rich biodiversity, and there are more than a dozen types of species of birds. With implementation of Northern Metropolis, an ecological disaster can result very easily, and so there must be a proper plan so that we can maintain the habitats of birds and other types of wildlife to benefit the community as a whole. I hope the administration can have a comprehensive conservation plan and tackle the climate change and also challenges to biodiversity in Hong Kong. Thank you. Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Of course, our priority task at hand is to fight the epidemic, but it's also time to ponder other issues. The pandemic has caused unprecedented changes to Hong Kong, including challenges to our economy. Tourism used to be one of our pillar industries, but now is in the doldrums. But this is also a golden opportunity to review the future development of this sector in the future. For traditional industries hard hit, we should reinvigorate the structure of these industries to provide more jobs for Hong Kong. The administration has proposed that the I&T Bureau should be renamed Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau. This goes to show the administration's emphasis of industrialization, but I'm afraid the actual initiatives are rather lackluster, and I think it's time the administration reconsider this. very early on, the government has already listed reorganization as its priority. But how come we haven't made much progress? Now, reindustrialization should use INT as the mainstay, and smart production lines should be set up in Hong Kong with commercialization of outcome of R&D. Now, when it comes to upgrading and transformation of local industries, well, I think we can have land in Hong Kong, but we cannot just rely on proper infrastructure. We should explore emerging and new industries in Hong Kong, and we should encourage enterprises to come to Hong Kong, and we should also address the manpower shortage. There are many industries with potential as a result of industrialization. Apart from food, health, and green technology, I think the third generation of semiconductor is also one possibility. We used to be a world leader in the production of semiconductors. Now the whole world is short of SIM cards and chips. The country has decided to develop its own chips and R&D in this area. We have good experience. We can attract semiconductor manufacturers to set up their production lines in Hong Kong. The administration should help these manufacturers and develop Hong Kong into a chip production center. The government should enhance vocational education so that teachers and students can learn to use skills and technology. We should not overemphasize theory alone. We should help students to develop real experience. We have a few top 100 world universities. Many international students have come to study in Hong Kong. However, the arrangement for non-local graduates to work in Hong Kong, where every year we've only got 7,000 to 9,000 in number. My worry is the government keeps spending resources to train INT talents, but some of these graduates are not going to stay and work in Hong Kong, so this will not help in addressing the manpower shortage issue. So the government should conduct studies to understand the thinking of these non-local graduates and encourage them to stay behind to work in Hong Kong. Many R&D are still in theory, and we lack commercialization of products. We lack top-notch INT companies in Hong Kong. Some graduates may think that INT industry is not as promising as other sectors, and as a result, many students would not engage in this sector. I think we should seek to have more cooperation with GBA and encourage large-scale R&D companies to set up their bases in Hong Kong, and then INT is a emerging industry for emerging sector in Hong Kong. We understand there will be another 150,000 job opportunities in GBA. This should be a golden opportunity for our young people. But then, since the anti-extradition row in 2019, young people are now rather reluctant to have anything to do with the mainland. I think they are sabotaging their own future. The government should work on our young people, explain to them, let them understand that Hong Kong's development is closely tied with that of the mainland. So long as we make good use of policies of the mainland and give full play to our advantages, so long as young people are willing to adopt an open mind, then I'm sure their future is bright. We'd like to talk about winning at the starting point. Now we have a lot of advantages. Many people in Hong Kong are winning at the starting line, but we lack poverty alleviation measures. As a result, many young people cannot share the fruits of economic development. Well, the poverty alleviation in the PA is not innovative enough. Of course, it's time to review our allowances under the social security schemes, but we have to adopt a broad and long-term view in tackling the wealth gap. We should improve our economic structure and our various policies to help. The government has always said that public housing is the most effective intervention in poverty alleviation. But then the waiting time for PRH is longer and longer. Many grassroots families, while waiting for PRH allocation, have to spend a large portion of their earnings on living, and it's hard to improve their quality of living. I suggest that the administration continue to use public housing to alleviate poverty so that the public can also understand the progress. With the outbreak of the epidemic, we do understand the downside of overemphasis on a particular industry. The four-pillar industry has seen declining GDP growth or contribution. With the exception of financial services industry, the labor force in the remaining three-pillar industries is declining, and young people have limited choice in terms of jobs, and upward mobility is being restricted. Because of the epidemic, many employees in the tourism industry have no choice but to engage in outsourcing jobs, which offer lower wages. I'm afraid this will only aggravate the wealth gap. I mentioned reindustrialization. I think this is a solution to address the wealth gap. The government seldom discusses this point. I think the government should review its manpower demand and review the positioning of different industries, and we should expedite the development of new and emerging industries to add impetus to economic development and to provide more upward mobility. We should review VPAT and review the apprentice system to provide more incentive for SMEs to provide internship and apprenticeship jobs for young people. And we should strengthen vocational training to help our workers to change trades. Last year, I must talk about our employees in Hong Kong. The PA said that we should tap the development opportunities in GBA. We should consolidate our position as a world aviation center. We should make use of the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge and strengthen cooperation between the Zhuhai Airport and Hong Kong International Airport. Many workers have worked for a long time in our airports. Some started working in this industry during Kai-Tak days. They have witnessed development of our aviation industry in the past few decades. I think they receive the plan of a Sky City with mixed feelings. On the one hand, they can continue to contribute to this industry. On the other hand, they have been hard hit by the recent epidemic. They used to earn $30,000 a month, but now that might have dropped to $10,000 only. Many of the employees in this sector were newly married when the epidemic broke out, but now they have to raise a young family, and they may not be able to survive in this industry. They are forced to change the industry. They cannot continue to work in this sector, which they have a passion. So I hope the administration can do its utmost with the staunch support of the government, of the central government. Let's put the current outbreak under control. In the long term, we should have an unemployment assistance mechanism to revive various sectors, and then we can realize the ambitious plans outlined in the PA. Thank you. Dr. Chow Man Kwong. Well, last year was the start of the 14th five-year plan. Affected by the epidemic, Hong Kong has yet to start the 14th five-year plan. I understand that the PA has have mentioned our various development, young people, INT, and cultural exchange hub, etc. But I don't think the PA has talked enough about these areas. Since last year, many provinces and municipalities have got their own 14th five-year plan based on the country's 14th five-year plan, based on their own economic foundation and their advantages. I'm afraid Hong Kong hasn't got any follow-up plan. Now let's take a look at Shenzhen, which is just a river away, just across the river. Shenzhen has got its future development plans, its own positioning, and I think their positioning is quite close to that of Hong Kong, and they are moving towards INT, so they are catching up very quickly. And I urge the administration to keep an eye on the industry development plan of provinces and municipalities, those in the GB in particular, following the 14th five-year plan. Now, in the light of current trade plan, you should have a development blueprint for our coming manufacturing sector. Yes, we should leverage our own advantages to go global. We should also cooperate with mainland enterprises, and we should remove red tapes and constraints to support new emerging industries. And we should learn from the successful examples of places like Shanghai along the Changjiang Delta. And we can also make use of strengths of these provinces to enhance our competitiveness. We should integrate into the development pattern of the country and capitalize on growing middle class in the mainland, and we should take part in the dual circulation of the country. Government departments must move with times. We should assist Hong Kong people and enterprises to develop overseas markets. I have organized a few rounds of surveys involving people and enterprises working in the mainland. So we don't have enough resources.
We only have the ETOs and the mainland offices, and these are not enough. Business players don't feel secured. That's why they are hesitant towards establishing a presence in the mainland. I urged the CDB and the CMAB, as well as the FSTB, collate the data every year to understand the development opportunities for young people and businesses, as well as their future needs to turn the situation around. Currently, the government is only basing its measures on data which is collated every year, and this is not enough. We have to take a preemptive approach in terms of charting out a policy so that the resources are not wasted. And also, we have to establish a one-stop supporting system for Hong Kong people in the mainland. In terms of the Northern Metropolis, in accordance with the government strategy, 2.5 million people will be accommodated there. However, the latest employment figure is 650,000. Based on the 60% participation rate, only there will be 850,000 people working there, but do not live there. Every day there will be a major commuting, and the transport network will be burdened. Thank you, Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, President, Deputy. In face of the serious epidemic situation, I think all of our focus is on anti-epidemic work. As the representative of the tourism sector in the Legislative Council, I am also very anxious. Not only does the epidemic affect people's safety, it also disrupts our work, study, and other plans, and it has dealt a fatal blow to my industry. We rely on the swift containing of the epidemic, and we also rely on the continuous support from the governments and the public to retain our talents and the tourism industry chain until the reopening of the boundary. From the policy address, we do see a new future and new hope. The CE has charted out a bright future for Hong Kong. There is definitely an opportunity for the tourism sector. In the second half of year 2019, we were hard hit by the black cloud violence. In the policy address, national security work is implemented, and it really boosts the confidence of inbound visitors. The central government also provides staunch support for the tourism sector. In the 14th five-year plan, Hong Kong will become the meeting point between East and West, and also we are the International Aviation and Maritime Center, and also we have the outline development plan of tourism for the GBA. It further consolidates our position as a tourism hub. We have tourism infrastructure, including the Palace Museum, the free runway system, as well as the Sky City project. Also, we will have the Kai Tak Sports Park. More importantly, the chief executive has taken on board the suggestion of the sector to establish the Sports, Tourism and Culture Bureau. This will help us better seize the opportunity brought about by the 14th five-year plan and help the tourism sector integrate with the national development. We can enhance our high value-added tourism services and enjoy more growth. This is a bright future ahead. However, at the moment, we are still struggling to stay afloat. In year 2016, we had 60 million visitors. In year 2019, the number has plunged. According to the Tourism Council, the number of outbound tourism travel in year 2018 and 19 accumulated to some $30 billion. However, in the previous 2 years, we only had some $200 million worth of business. For air tickets, the number has dropped to some $3.5 billion. The loss we suffered was huge. I would like to make use of this opportunity to clarify some misunderstanding about the tourism industry. According to the association, because of the epidemic, the occupancy rate of hotel rooms in year 2020 has dropped to 42.87%. The average rent was $622. In year 2021, we had zero visitors. Hotels changed the mindset and rolled out local staycation programs, as well as cooperating with the governments in providing quarantine rooms. The occupancy rate was 61%. The average rent was $681, but it was just half of year 2018. In the latest wave, because of the epidemic, the occupancy rate has dropped to lower than 30%. The hope was dashed for the tourism, for the hotel sector. And because of the stringent social distancing measures, facilities have to be infection control standards have to be complied with, and also plus the routine and maintenance costs. The hotel industry is really struggling. Now, our airport has a catchment area of 22 countries with some 200 airlines, with a daily movements number of some 2,000 flights. Now, under the epidemic, strict quarantine measures have been implemented. Compared with year 2016, the number of visitors received has plunged by 98%. In the short term, we don't see any prospects of revival. The government has provided adequate support for practitioners in the airline industry. In the latest round of AEF, the government has provided additional support for the tourism industry. Our views were taken on board. Hotels and coach buses are included. This is applaudable. However, airlines, convention and exhibition industry, and so on, they are still left out. And judging by the current trend of the epidemic, we don't see any hope for revival in the next 6 months. The additional support is only a drop in the bucket for the industry. It won't be enough to sustain us till the revival. I believe that the government has to review the talent pool of the tourism industry. ESS should be rolled out for the tourism sector, and also the government should help the businesses at least sustain their operation for 6 months. Finally, the entire tourism industry chain should be preserved. It is an important catalyst of Hong Kong's economy. We have to avoid losing any part of the chain. The government has listened actively to associations and practitioners to provide us with the much-needed support, and also our practitioners have not been lying flat. They have been transforming themselves and upgrading themselves, as well as enhancing the tourism resources and prepare a quality tourism package in preparation for the future revival. But this is a long and hard road. We have to adjust to the new tourism mode after the epidemic, and also we have to cope with the new need for digitalization. The government should roll out short-term measures to preserve the tourism industry. And the Sports, Culture and Tourism Bureau should be established as soon as possible to engage in talks with the sector to develop a high value-added tourism industry in Hong Kong, to maintain our brand as a tourist attraction, as a major tourist attraction. I call for members of the public to cooperate with the governments to overcome the difficulties and return life to normalcy, and for the boundaries to be reopened so that we can all enjoy the brighter future promised in the policy address. I so submit I support the motion. Thank you. Mr. Duncan Chiu. Deputy, the nation is adopting INT as a driver for national development. It has set the strategic goal for to become the most advanced country in the world by year 2035, and we are part of the country's plan. We have to integrate with the 14th Five-Year Plan and the GBA development, better integrate with the national development and the dual circulation strategy. We have to play our role as the international INT hub. We have to enhance the role we play in this regard. Now, the policy address mentioned the Northern Metropolis, but what will the INT industry, what role will the INT industry play in this plan? How are we going to introduce talent? We need more details. Many mainland provinces have the specific strategy in terms of showing talents. What about us in terms of lands, funding, and so on? How can we provide a preferential measures to introduce high-end INT industries and talents? We really need a long-term blueprint for development of INT. The last time we did this was 20 years ago. That was Mr. Tung Chee-hwa, our first chief executive. He set up the INT commission under the chief executive's office. 2 reports were rolled out, charting out the development pathway for Hong Kong to become an INT hub. Now, the science park as Cyberport is the fruit of this plan. Now, 20 years later, now we need a new blueprint so that we can align with the national development. We have to find out what kind of INT industries we should focus on in the next 2 decades and draw the relevant talents so as to achieve the goal of Hong Kong becoming an INT center in the world. Now, the State Reform Commission has relaxed the criteria for entering the INT market in Shenzhen. There are 6 aspects and 24 specific measures to relax the requirements for entering the biotech and medicine INT sectors. Every department has given their opinion, from microelectronics to funding, talents, nurturing, and promotion. There are guiding opinions provided. This is a very comprehensive and in-depth report. There are also chapters involving Guangdong province and Hong Kong. Is the Hong Kong SAR government involved? Hong Kong and Shenzhen can take part in the national plan, and also the INT sector can be involved. We can also contribute. So for these special measures and pilot zone, can the Hong Kong SAR government communicate with the central authority so that guiding opinions can be provided to lead the development? Now, last year the country passed the data security law. This is the foundation of a successful smart city. We have to have similar laws in Hong Kong as soon as possible. And also I support enhancing the ecosystem for private equity fund so that more fund can be drawn to support the development of INT and startups. I hope that more private equity fund can be introduced from the mainland. Time's up, Mr. Duncan Chiu. I support the policy address. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chen Pui Leung. Mr. Chen Pui Leung, please unmute your microphone. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Deputy, now the theme of this session is new impetus to the economy integration into the national development. Well, that means we have to have mutual access at a deeper level. Now, we are an important financial center. There are many connect schemes in the securities sector, in the securities market, and other wealth management markets. Now, I want to talk about the importance of insurance connect. Now, the insurance sector plays an important role, so there has to be breakthrough in the mutual access arrangement. There are already the conditions for insurance connect. For example, with Greater Bay Area, we have unique advantages. There are also market demands. The insurance industry in Hong Kong is well established. In the Greater Bay Area, there are strong demands for insurance products. So we could complement each other with the Greater Bay Area, and there could be synergy effect achieved. In 2020, the insurance premium cost was some over $6 billion, and in 2019, in terms of filtration rate of the insurance market is 19.7%. It's ranked the second in the world. In the Greater Bay Area, there is a high degree of openness, and there's also a huge market. Now, there is some report in 2021 that shows that GBA has some economic scale of $115 trillion dollars, but then the insurance fluctuation rate is only 6%. So there's some huge potential for development of the insurance industry. Now, we are to build a 1-hour living circle with the GBA. So there will be people moving between the two places, and they will need some form of insurance products that suit their needs. So there is a immense room for development of the insurance industry. We could provide high-end medical insurance products and other products. And also there will be much construction activities in the Greater Bay Area, so there will be a stronger demand for insurance related to works. And then we have so it is a matter of, it is actually the trend that we have Insurance Connect. Of course, we need national policy support now in the GBA development framework. There is some point about developing cross-boundary insurance products for cross-boundary vehicles and so on. In January this year, the Law Reform Commission, the Committee on Law Reform, they have already published a paper on relaxing mutual market access, and that's mention of a deeper level of mutual access in the insurance sector, and there should be more convenient risk evaluation and assessment services as well for the insurance sector. Now, the government should follow up on a number of aspects of work. Now, Hong Kong is a leader in the industry sector in GBA, so we have to make sure that Insurance Connect happens. Or we could model the arrangement on other Connect schemes, and there could be a closed arrangement so that we could just first start with certain types of insurance products, and then all the claims must go back to the mainland. And then there are 3 different insurance supervision regulation authorities, and so there's a need for innovative arrangement and promotion of cooperation among the 3 authorities. There should be a dedicated fund for promoting the Insurance Connect scheme. And we could set up a special task force that could talk to the relevant supervisory departments in GBA and Macau. And then there could be data analysis and other forms of back-end support. The Hong Kong could also consider setting up an insurance exchange in Hong Kong because there are successful examples in the UK and other places, and then that could provide a fundraising platform. And the GBA could become the cluster of insurance products, and so. And then it could also serve as a demonstration zone. The government should seize upon the development of the GBA to promote the development of the insurance sector. Now, on elderly services, now of course we need to support the elderly population. We are becoming an aging population. There will be a higher number of the elderly population percentage. And then in the 2021 policy address, we said that we want to help the elderly to retire on the mainland. So the various services could be extended to beyond Guangdong. There are about 100,000 elderly persons living on the mainland. So that means more, and with better facilities, more may choose to retire on the mainland. But then we need to provide enough incentives to attract more people to go to the mainland, because now there are differences in the healthcare system, and then healthcare costs are high on the mainland. People may not be able to benefit from the medical insurance policies, or people are not familiar with the healthcare system there and so on. So these are reasons why people are not going to the mainland for retirement. So we need to address all these issues, and then Hong Kong people will enjoy retirement in GBA. Well, there's also an aging population on the mainland. They're also facing serious problems with supporting the elderly. But then the the mainland government has been actively promoting the reform of the insurance sector. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, it stated that there should be various retirement systems for the elderly. And now, of course, for mainland insurance companies, they have a closed management system to provide insurance coverage for rehabilitation and other healthcare services for the elderly. And then they've built an industry chain in that respect. And so they are trying to help with the problem of supporting the elderly on the mainland. We should seize upon this opportunity of the GBA. We should encourage our Hong Kong insurers to invest in the elderly services industry on the mainland. There should be some policy support to facilitate such investment. This could also address the problems of supporting the elderly in Hong Kong. Now, we need to have mutual access with the GBA market, and so we could provide diversified insurance products and other health and wealth management products for people. So Hong Kongers could buy suitable insurance products while they live on the mainland. This will actually help to lessen the financial burden on the SAR government, and then we could provide individual and suitable elderly services for the old people. Now, I am putting forward these ideas so we could start a discussion. I hope the government will look into this in greater detail. So I speak. Dr. Johnny Ng. Now, we have problems with housing and land supply, and this is also a deep-seated conflict in the community. There is a survey on people's wish to buy a home, and then some think that property prices are going to go up by another 40% in the coming year. But then 60% of the respondents say they are not interested in buying homes. That's a new high in 5 years. Of course, whether someone buys a home or not is a matter of family consideration. But if property prices are high, of course, there's a deterrent, because you may work very hard, but you can never keep up with the surge in housing prices. Then if people can't buy their homes, of course, they will be unhappy. And of course, for those who could not afford private housing, they could apply for public housing, but they need to meet the certain eligibility criteria. Now, the average waiting time for public housing is 5.9 years. It's a 22-year high. So housing is no longer just a livelihood issue. It's also about the governance of the government. Now, Mr. Xia Balong of the State Council's Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office says that Hong Kong has to address the housing issue. So the government needs to find ways to increase housing and land supply. The Land for Tomorrow vision was announced in the 2018 policy address, and the Northern Metropolis development strategy was proposed in the 2021 policy address. So creating more land is one way to build housing. And apart from providing land for housing and providing job opportunities, I support the two major initiatives. But then if we keep to the existing development model, it may take a long time. The two projects may not be completed as scheduled, because right now the approval process is so cumbersome, and there is a question of duplication of consultation requirements. So the government needs to review all the relevant laws and regulations. We should streamline the process and speed up the approval process. Now, even for these two initiatives, if they are to be completed on time, we have to wait another 20 years. So they cannot really address the immediate problems. The government still has to come up with midterm to near-term policies, such as developing brownfield sites and making urban redevelopment and so on, and also the provision of transition housing. So there is a need for a multi-pronged approach to speed up the supply of housing. Now I want to talk about promoting economic development. Now, in past few years, we've been hit by the black cat violence and epidemic that slowed our economic development. So the government needs to do more to introduce diversity to our economy. I welcome the proposal of reindustrialization. Before 2025, the government also needs to achieve the carbon neutrality target. So while we promote reindustrialization, we do also promote the use of green technology as well as ESG investment, carbon reduction efforts, and so on. So, and then we should also build a carbon trading center in Hong Kong. In the 14th five-year plan, there's the development of a digital economy that is actually the major trend forward. And the scale is much higher than the smart city concept we are proposing. President Xi Jinping published an article to say that we have to keep building the digital economy because that is all about national development. Hong Kong is an international financial center, so we are in a position to promote digital economy. The government should come up with more policies and resources. We should actually research into our own digital technology, such as blockchain and artificial intelligence and so on. So we need to be more competitive, and then in terms of digital development, and then we could integrate into national development. Thank you. Mr. Chen Hock-Fung. Well, we need to provide cheap housing to those with needs, and we need to provide affordable health care services to those in need, and then we need to provide foundation education to the public. That's what the government should do. Since the establishment of the SAR in 1997, in the first policy address, housing was given top priority. At the time, the waiting time for public housing was 6.5 years. So Mr. Tong Chi-Hwa pointed out in the policy address that starting from 2005, the waiting time for public housing had to be reduced to 3 years, but then he achieved the target in advance by 2 years in 2003. But that only lasted about a few years, and now we're back to a waiting time of 6 years.
Last week, the Housing Services Panel, Mr. Frank Chan, Secretary for Transport and Housing, answered a question I put to him in the following way. I apologize. He said that flat allocation within 3 years. I'm sorry. Mr. Chen Hock-Fung, yes, my script, my speaking note.
At
the Housing Services Panel last week, Mr. Frank Chan, the Secretary for Transport and Housing, said that it was the Housing Authority's target that PRH applicants should be allocated a flat within 3 years, meaning there is not a target set by the government. Now, we can have two types of public housing, namely rental and subsidized housing, subsidized sales flat. The government should make it clear who should be eligible for subsidy and those who cannot afford private housing to become flat owners. Public housing should should take care of housing needs of members of the public. For SDUs, meaning that we're not doing a good job. With over 100,000 SDUs, after we have cleared the waiting list for PRH and SDUs, and the problem is resolved. To address the housing problem of Hong Kong, we have to have the following four things. First, determination. Second, legislative amendment, and then now for the first determination, Mr. Xia Baolong of Hong Kong Macau Affairs Service said that he hoped that by 2047 we could have major improvement in satisfying housing need, and we should then say goodbye to caged apartments and SCUs. In 2003, the government used PRH as a major target. However, in 2014, instead of being the main party responsible, the government became a facilitator and then became an overseer. So this 10-year long-term housing strategy is just a rolling plan. It's just a rolling, delaying, stalling plan. The government's change in role was confirmed when the government said last year that it was the HA's responsibility to ensure the people can be allocated a flat in 3 years' time. And then cash allowance will have to be paid by HA to PRH applicants who have been waiting for more than 3 years. I think the government has passed the buck to a public body. If we look at this year's policy address, the government is determined to raise the flat production of public and private housing from 6 to 4 to 7.3, and then 330,000 flats should be built for the coming 10-year period. Now, if we can really achieve this target, then we will see a big relief. The question is, I'd like to know to what extent that target is inflated. In 2017, in the PA briefing, the Secretary said that in between 2017-18 to 2021-22, there should be 100,300 flats produced. But according to some later statistics, the actual number of flats produced was only 90,000. Secretary, this has already included the subsidized sale flats and PRH from the Housing Society and the Housing Authority. That is 10,000 short from the current projection, is also 60,000 less than what's in the long-term housing strategy. Figures do not lie. Whether we can achieve this target of flat allocation within 3 years is obvious. Now, subsidized sale flats, i.e. home ownership schemes, are so important. Those who can't afford private accommodation can become home owners under this scheme. Since the ultimate target of housing, public housing, is to address the housing needs of these people, then property speculation is against the government's policy intent. So we should review the whole terms of HOS, in particular shorten or lengthen the resale period of HOS flats. And secondly, we should amend the legislation. Town planning regulations should be amended to suit the actual circumstances. There are calls that the town plan procedures should be simplified so that we can have land for more housing. Now, we will only have more housing supply in the medium and long term. We are looking for flats in Lantau tomorrow and also Northern Metropolis. It takes more than a decade for these programs to be realized. In the CE question time, I suggested to the CE directly that for projects under planning or in progress, we should raise the planning intensity. The plot ratio should be increased from 5.5 to 6.5 in certain sites. So long as we work on the design, we don't necessarily have to have blocks with 80 or 100 stories. We can greatly reduce the number of units. So I think this is a measure that can give us immediate effect. The third solution is land formation. As I said, we need land to build flats. According to 2030 study, we need 6,200 hectares by 2048. Lantau tomorrow and the Northern Metropolis will be the major sources of land in the future. However, that is help too far away. There are calls that we need land within the very short period, within the very near future. So we can consider using the enclaves and also the periphery of our country parks. Over 80% of Hong Kong is covered by country parks, quite rare in the world. The government can consider using the periphery of our country parks. There are suggestions that the periphery of Thailand Country Park with a relatively low ecological value is near Route 3 and is close to nearby West Rail Station. There are 66 hectares of land available for building 30,000 flats. So long as we develop a percentage of our country parks, we will have 443 hectares to provide 100,000 units. In a residential site in Tuen Mun to be tendered very soon, there is this term that the unit should be no less 280 square feet. Are we going to do the same for future plots of land? Now, this is open to discussion, but the government should use more lenient parameters so that we won't have a shortage of land in the future. Now, the fourth solution is projection. Now, land is very expensive in Hong Kong. Now, for some new developments in the NT, the unit cost is over 30,000 per square foot, and many young people say that their monthly salary could hardly buy a square foot of flat. Now, for those who are under 35 years old, in 1995 they had a higher possibility of being flat owners. They accounted for 20.1% of the population. With the situation aggravating, by 2019 the figure dropped to 7.6%. That shows that's one of the reasons why the younger generation feels hopeless. And this concludes the performance of the government in dealing with the housing needs of our young people. DAB proposed a reform plan in housing supply. If we adopt this plan, we'll be able to shorten the waiting time for PRH to 3 years, and the prices of HOS flats should be closer to the affordability level of young people. I think we should have some measures to help young families to become home owners. So DAB is of the view that we should be providing 15,000 HOS flats per year to enhance the chances of young people becoming homeowners. And for PRH production, the target should be a waiting time of 3 years. To achieve that, DAB estimates that we need to have 30,000 new flats per year plus 10,000 recycled units that within 4 years will be able to clear the backlog of waiting lists. And then very soon people can become PRH tenants within 3 years, and then the government can expedite the supply of land in the short term. President Xi said as early back as 2017 that housing should be for living rather than for speculation. That is a way to address our deep-seated conflicts and to resolve the long waiting time of PRH and to solve the problem of property prices being unaffordable. So we should have the determination, amend our legislation, form land, and reform. This is the way to help the housing need of our people. Mr. Yang Gang, Mr. Chamberlain, and another member made many comments about the financial services representing the views of the sector. Now, views from the business sector has been relayed to the financial sector, and I will not repeat. Here, I'd like to talk about how Hong Kong should be an international shipping center. The policy addressed that Hong Kong should develop smart ports and develop high-value logistic and also marine business to strengthen links with the DBA to strengthen Hong Kong's position as an international maritime center. After accession to WTO by the country in 2001, benefiting from the rapid development of the country, our ports have been for 4 years in a row the busiest container port in the world. However, starting from 2005, Singapore has overtaken Hong Kong, and in the and our ETU also fell by 1.1% last year. That means that in effect, Hong Kong has already lost its status as ocean-going shipping center. Now, to maintain Hong Kong's status as an international maritime center, we face challenges on the following 3 fronts. First, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou have highly duplicated functions, and there is also lack of connectivity between the logistics arrangement. And then Kuiting terminal is lack of supporting resources, and is also rather backward in terms of facilities. Third, midstream and cross-boundary transport has been subject to challenges because of the epidemic and also increase in efficiency of mainland ports. The cross-boundary truck trips have dropped from 13.2 thousand million trips in 2019 to less than 5 million last year. Midstream operations has also seen a drop from 250 ETU to 280,000 TEUs. Now, we have to be a leader in the GBA instead of a follower. And so we should think out of the box. We should be bold enough to make breakthroughs in policies. We can set up a pilot zone and then have cooperation with Shenzhen so that we can set up a league of ports in GBA, and this will help to enhance our status as an international maritime center. I hope that the government can make this agenda item for discussion with GBA cities.
Without long-term planning, we are doomed to fail. Despite the government's efforts to promote our status as an international aviation and maritime center, the lead between mainland's economy and our economy is still widening. In this new period of development, we need to take the initiative to transform our economic structure. I hope that the government can plan ahead and be more active to contribute to the development of our international aviation center status. Thank you, President. Mr. Sunny Tang. President, the policy address a focus on the integration with the national development. We've experienced political turmoil, which dealt a blow to our reputation. The central authority implemented the NSL in Hong Kong and improved our electoral system so that we have returned to stability and then prosperity. It set us on the right path. While developing the nation, the central government still cares about our welfare. The GBA Development Plan and the Qianhai and Hengqin Plan embrace Hong Kong into the national development. I think we have to seize the opportunity brought about by the national developments. The HKSAR government has to remove red tapes. Otherwise, we cannot channel the central government support into economic fruits. In the policy address, there are different chapters mentioning supporting measures for SMEs. I thank the government for setting up different funds to support the development of the businesses. However, the approval procedure is complicated. Many SMEs applicants are hesitant. For example, the BUD BUD fund. Last year, the geographical coverage was extended, and the upper limit was extended to $6 million. It is a good move. However, I was told by applicants that there are many problems about the BUD. The amount of application for many SMEs is just $100,000. However, they have to go through all the same hoops like major corporations. It takes multiple committees to approve the applications. For procurement above $25,000, comparison between two sources have to be made. For higher amount products, more comparison have to be drawn. I urge the government to simplify the application procedures for funds like BUD and enhance the flexibility. Second, I am highly concerned about the contribution to the textile and garments industries after the restructuring of the government structure. We have to take a national perspective. We need a reindustrialization, a blueprint and strategy to take the industry on path to reindustrialization. About reindustrialization, the idea was floated in year 2016, and still we don't have a blueprint. The high value added and emerging industries are benefited, however, not for the traditional industries. We have to focus on application of technologies along the production chain. I think the government should come up with a comprehensive blueprint so that the once prosperous traditional industries can thrive again and catch up with the times. I hope the government can create new growth points by doing this. Finally, the epidemic is still serious. The government should help the struggling SMEs. $10,000 consumption vouchers for everyone is indeed very helpful. Thank you. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, President. First of all, I would like to talk about the Northern Metropolis policy. It is really the highlight of the 2021 policy address. I think this concept shows that the government has adopted a new mindset. With the new metropolis model, the development potential of the new territories will be released, housing supply will be ensured, advanced I&T industry will be developed, and also it will help us to better integrate with national development. So I am in full support of the Northern Metropolis plan. I think the key to this strategy is about innovation, expedition, and implementation. I urge this term of the government and the next term of the government consider creating the position of under or deputy secretary to provide high-level steering in terms of Northern Metropolis and development of the new territories. It involves creation of land, housing, I&T, as well as environment. Without high-level guidance and steering, bureaus and departments will take a silo mindset. That's why I support creating the position of Deputy Secretary for steering the development of Northern Metropolis. Second, we only have the long-term development plan, and we don't have near-term and middle-term strategies. Without a focused roadmap, how can we consult the public? I urge the government to establish a 14 5-year plan for Hong Kong and set a 5-year plan for the development of the Northern Metropolis. so we can roll out measures whenever it is ready. Third, I think we have to adhere to the principle of striking a balance between development and protection of the environment. We have to step up protection for the promenade and parks near the shore, but we cannot allow developments be hindered by outdated environmental protection policies and laws. I urge the government to add a greening and a low carbon as standards in the land sales program, and so that we can achieve environmental protection. And also we have to be in touch with the people. Consultation should be conducted at every stage, rather than consulting the public after the plan is formed. We have to be humble and listen to constructive views. Only then will the Northern Metropolis idea be supported by members of the public. In terms of lands and housing, the bottleneck is land development procedures. Now, when we have to change land use and build houses, we need to go through EPD, town planning board, and so on. The procedures are very long. I urge the government to amend the town planning ordinance and remove red tapes, compress the timetable, and speed up the approval procedures. I think the government should make good use of INT to speed up land creation. The government should adopt BIM and other advanced technologies into public works projects. INT should be a requirement in tender invitation so as to expedite construction period as well as enhance construction safety, so that Mr. Xia Baolong's vision of Hong Kong bidding farewell to inadequate housing be fulfilled soon. I so submit. Mr. Martin Liao. President, the policy address is entitled Building a Bright Future Together. It is a very progressive policy address. It sets out the long-term development plan for Hong Kong. In terms of economy, the government is actively responding to the positions given to Hong Kong by the central government in the 14th Five-Year Plan. Besides supporting traditional industries, the government is providing more support for the culture and INT sectors, which we have neglected in the past 20 years. Now, the government has achieved a breakthrough. Rather than developing the lands alongside the Victoria Harbour, the Northern Metropolis idea is floated. As we all know, the premises for improving the economy is the effective containment of the epidemic. Now, a lot of members have spoken in the first session. I think we have said all we need to say. I will not repeat the point. I would like to say a few words about the impact of the epidemic on our economy anyway. In year 2020, with the COVID-19 epidemic, the economy has contracted by 6.1%. In year 2021, when the situation has stabilized, the economy grew notably. Local GDP, the real GDP has grown by 6.4% year on year. Of course, it was because of the low base effect. Unemployment rate has dropped to 3.9%. Now, with the fifth wave in year 2022, members of the public and the business sector are hard hit. International rating agency has dialed down the economic economic growth forecast for Hong Kong to 1.5%. SMEs, because of the lack of scale, they would become the victims during turmoils. According to the statistics of the government, in the mid-2021, 22, the employment rate among SMEs has dropped tremendously. Many sectors were hard hit, especially retail, tourism, and catering. There may be a wave of closure. Now, under the economy chapter of the policy address, the commercial data interchange platform will be provided for SMEs, and also more protection will be offered for intellectual properties. The 6th round of AEF was rolled out, and now still I receive complaints from the public. Some struggling SMEs are not eligible for the 6th round of the AEF. I hope the government can adjust its policies suitably. SME employs 45% of our labor force, and it makes up for 90% of our economy. We should really preserve them. And also we should pay attention to the impact of the epidemic on consumption activities and the supply chain. We should help our industries to transform and upgrade, including increasing the value of technology vouchers. President, our economy lacked diversity for many years. The fruits of the economy was not shared by people in different sectors. It widens the wealth gap and caused deep-rooted conflicts. I have been urging the governments to diversify the economy and provide upward mobility opportunities for young people. During the consultation period last year, I suggested to the chief executive that we should enhance our integration with the GBA and improve and enhance the shift of economy towards the north. We should promote the cultural and creative industries, and also I have also made some points on population policies. In the 2021 policy address, in terms of trade and commerce, in response to the national 14th five-year plan, Hong Kong's position would be enhanced as an international trade hub. We should speed up the accession to RCEP. $1 billion was committed to the CNE industry to inject, which will be injected to the industry. However, we can be more progressive because of the quickly changing geopolitical situation, as well as the unstable supply chain. Hong Kong can become a superconnector for the country. The mainland is set to overtake U.S. as the largest consumption commodity market in the world. The prospect is bright. We have to plan ahead to shift our exports from the U.S. and the Western countries to the mainland. We should support Hong Kong brands to tap into the mainland domestic market.
Okay.
RCEP came into effect at the beginning of this year. There are 15 members of RCEP. The total trading turnover is more than $770 billion US dollars. So we could take this opportunity to further integrate into the regional sector, and then we could step up further cooperation and ties with the various partners, and then we can also seize upon opportunity to expand our professional services and other services. Now, on financial infrastructure, we must keep improving the Hong Kong as an offshore RMB business hub, and then we could try and meet the needs of international investment. There's another focus of this policy address. In the next 2 decades, the Northern Metropolis, amounting to 30,000 hectares, will be built in the next. So this is proposed by the chief executive. This is to create new opportunities for Hong Kong. It will. This strategy will help to increase housing land supply as well as to promote Hong Kong's integration into national development. The Northern Metropolis Development Strategy could provide about 600 hectares of housing land and land for economic development. It could accommodate 2.5 million people, providing 600,000 jobs. Now, more importantly, there will be planning straddling free places that is a breakthrough from the administrative boundary between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and then there could be further collaboration between Hong Kong and Shenzhen on innovation, technology, and so on. So this is of strategic significance. It's the first time that there's a planning blueprint crossing the boundary. Now, I commend the chief executive for appreciating the importance of such development, and then the government is brave enough to come up with this new idea. Now, the Northern Metropolis is a massive project. It's very much forward-looking, but it's visionary. And but can it really proceed as scheduled? Can it meet the expectation of the public? It's all about execution on the part of the government, because otherwise it will just be, a blueprint on the drawing board, and it will be no more. Well, I'd like to raise a number of concerns here. First, for Northern Metropolis, the backbone will be the railway system. In Lok Ma Chau Loop, and to the new Huanggang Northern Link and the 17 Technopole and so on. Now, can the 17 Technopole attract talents? I think this rail link is very important. Now, but it often takes over a decade to build a rail link in Hong Kong, and we've seen many cases of cost overruns and delays. But then on the in Shenzhen, on the other hand, they are quick with they have major project to build railways. For the Northern Link, the spur line, we haven't even started works yet. So, but then for Shenzhen, they have ambitious railway development project, and so there is a gap between the development of the two places in this respect. Now, if we want a twin city collaboration, is more about just a slogan. The government has to reform its administrative process and workflow. We need to streamline processes, then we can keep up with the pace of Shenzhen, and then we could develop together. And another element that will promote the development of the Northern Metropolis is about building an innovation and technology circle. And enterprises will be attracted to move into the 17 Technopole, and that will then lead Hong Kong's economic transformation. So the government could learn from the experience of Singapore and Korea, who are our two main competitors. The government could offer more attractive tax concessions, and even for eligible companies, they could be free land provision. Hong Kong could also tap into our own advantage in research and development, and then the mainland has an advantage in commercialization of R&D products outcomes. So then we could achieve a clustering effect. The government could refer to the experience of many other countries. They've set up cross-boundary collaboration zones, and also there should be relaxation of immigration control at the Central Pole to facilitate talents flow. Now I'd like to speak on housing and land supply. Many Hong Kong families live in small flats. The average living space is just 160 square foot per person. The past few governments have tried to address this issue. And there is some long-term housing strategy to provide land for housing production in a 10-year period. But then the people are really concerned when they could get public housing. 330,000 public housing units are to be built in the next decade. 2/3 of these units will only be completed in the second 5-year period. So that means the waiting time for public housing will continue to extend. The housing authority has to compress this process, and it should bring in new technology for building the units. And then we have the 2030 plus strategy. We want to improve the per capita living space to 215 square foot or so. And if we want to, drive out the shoebox flats, we have to take various measures. For example, with new projects, we have to dictate a minimum area, but then there could also be redevelopment, and we have to address that issue as well. Now, the government needs to compress the whole land creation process. As a short-term measure, plot ratio could be increased where feasible, so that we could address the imbalance in housing and land supply. And then we will be able to provide more units that are larger too. But I have to stress this is just a short-term measure. In the medium to long term, plot ratio must have regard to the need for developing a livable city. So I speak in support of the motion of thanks. I now adjourn the council. The council will resume at 9 a.m. tomorrow.